Welcome back to the Adventure Reignition podcast. Today I am with Alex Medzik. How is it going, Alex?
I'm going great, man. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic and I'm really looking forward for this interview because you are a photographer. I got in touch with photography when I was traveling the world and I met a lot of other photographers who taught me how to use a camera along the way. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And that's going to be the object of my first question here. Photography. What's your relationship with that? And why did you start to do that in the first place?
Yeah. So I've kind of a very long and back and forth relationship with photography. I shouldn't say back and forth, but very long and drawn out and evolving relationship with photography. Like every annoying hipster kid, I picked up a camera when I was like 7. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I can take pictures of things. And I was that kid. I always had a camera in my hand. I bought an SLR when I was a teenager. Kind of kept going from there. It really, really kicked in for me in my teenage years. I wasn't like a super happy kid. I just kind of felt stuck where I was, just because as a 14, 13-year-old, you can't drive anywhere. You don't have a ton of control over your life. So I just didn't have a lot going for me, at least in my head in that moment. And so I really started to lean into photography there as, I don't want to say a coping mechanism, but I mean, it really was something that I felt like I could be good at. Something that I could do, something that could take me out of the house, something that could like take me places. So I really, really got into it then, became obsessed, be watching YouTube videos. I did cyber school and homeschool for a while, or I should say my whole school career. And so I would just be watching photography YouTube videos in the background when I was supposed to actually be working. So I like to say, I barely have a high school education, but I have a great photo education. I kind of ignored English for that. I didn't feel that was fine. I developed film chemicals in my parents' bathtub when I was like 16, just for something else to do. I thought that was a blast. And then eventually around 17 or 18, I started like picking up random little portrait jobs, random events, but I was still kind of like a coffee shop kid. I was still working at the coffee shop, doing the stuff on the side. At that point, it was just like, this is something I'm okay at. And I need money. So like, let's mix it up. Let's do some work. But then I had a friend who was a wedding DJ, and he was like, hey man, do you want to come to the wedding? I'll give you like $100 and just take some photos behind the scenes of me. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Like, let's see what that's about. And I went there and I was like, oh wow, like this is really cool. And then he introduced me to some wedding studios, and I was like, holy crap, this is something I can do as a career. Like I could actually like realistically make this a career. And so at that point, it shifted into being a job, like more of a full-time job, which was exciting. But I did that for a few years, and something started to shift. It stopped just being a job. It was always a fun job. It was always a fun job that I really loved. But it kind of went beyond that once I really started to realize the potential for meaning that there was in weddings. I really, really fell in love with just the richness of story that was there, on the day of, but also the things that kind of lead into that wedding day. And so, the last number of years, I really made it my goal to really just, photography is a tool. Photography is a tool that I can use to A, connect with people, and B, really show up for people and tell their story. And I mean, literally on the phone with my couples beforehand, I always tell them, hey, I think you guys are more important than your photos. And that's why your photos are going to really matter. Because if it's just about the photos, then you might as well be a magazine. And you guys are so much better than a magazine. Everything has led you to this moment. And I want to know why you care about this. I want to know what matters to you, because those things are going to reflect in your photos rather than just being kind of pretty pictures. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. It's gone from being like, cameras are kind of fun, to like, oh my God, I have nothing going for me. Let me, shoot some film photos and develop them in my bathtub. To now it's like, wow, like this is just a really fun tool that I can use to serve and connect and tell stories for people.
That's brilliant. And I have, just to be clear, you haven't studied photography. Is that correct?
Not formally. I mean, I've spent so much time, talking to people, watching videos, maybe going to one-off classes, but no actual college. So no student debt, which is pretty dope.
That's amazing. I know it's a big thing in the US for people who are going to college and having like a lot of debt once they're done with it. And that's the object of my next question. I'm really passionate about that, finding something you love and trying to make the best out of it. And what would you say to a kid who's like interested in doing photography as well, whatever it might be, and they thinking about going to college? What would be your perspective on that based on what have just said?
Yeah. So obviously, I feel like I did great without college. I don't think going to college was the right decision for me. In a general sense, I would probably ask people to really dig down and say, hey, what am I going to get out of this? Is this worth the cost? Because it's not cheap, right? And I think anytime you throw down a lot of money and invest a lot of time, you want to make sure you're actually going to get out of it what you need. In my experience, I feel like when it comes to something like photography, probably 8 times out of 10, it doesn't make sense. Now, if you're going for maybe a hyper technical, like commercial photography or something, and then maybe it's like the connections you get from college are the most valuable part of that. But in general, I would really, really tell people to pause and say, hey, why do I need to go to college? What am I going to get out of this that I couldn't get? Because what brought it to me is A, I didn't want to go to college, but B, I kind of sat down and said, okay, if I'm going to spend 2 to 4 to 6 years on this and, however much money, what could I do in that time with that time and money instead of college that could, but, could that take me to my goals higher or faster? Or maybe not. For me, I mean, obviously, I'll never know what could have happened, but I feel like I made the right decision there. So really just clarify, what am I going to get out of this? What could I get out of doing something else? If I had another option, would that be better? And, you usually have another option.
This is funny because when I'm listening to you, I'm pretty sure everything looks like what simple, but I'm sure behind the scenes is not that simple. It seems like you were very clear when it was about to choose your path. It went smoothly when I hear you talking. But what was the challenge behind embracing that path as a real career?
Yeah, I mean, first off, it was terrifying. It's still terrifying to a certain extent, when we're kind of doing your own thing. But it's progressively got a little bit less terrifying as I'm like, oh wow, this didn't destroy my life. I'm doing okay. But I mean, I think the initial belief that it actually was possible was lacking. I've always been the person to say, ooh, I don't feel like I can do this, but logically I can look at this and say, okay, maybe I can. So I'm going to push for it. All the while I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. But I'm just kind of like forcefully pushing myself through it with my brain. Because I mean, early on, I mean, it still is to an extent true now. People kind of treat being a photographer as like, this is not a viable career. Only the best of the best of the best, like the top 1% of photographers can actually make the money. I think the median photographer's salary is like $30,000 US a year or something in the United States. And there's or the average one, I should say. And there's so many photographers. And so everybody's like, nah, you can do it as a part-time job. Like take some kid's birthday party shots and keep working at a coffee shop. Or maybe you have to like get super high commercial and like shoot for Vogue after busting your butt for 20 years. So really just doing it, just continuously showing up and believing, hey, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to keep pushing through this. That's probably the most important part of it, a part of what I'm now. And I'm still in that phase, right? I moved across the country. I moved almost 2,000 miles away from Pennsylvania to Colorado. And I have a plan, right? And every day I wake up and I'm like, oh, I can't do this. Like, this is, who gave me the right to do this? I don't feel like I'm going to succeed. But then I look at my list and I'm like, okay, I'm doing everything. Like, I'm going to push through this fog of the unknown because I believe logically that this is going to work out, and it is. Every day that I continue to show up, it continues to work out more and more. I'm not sure if that was your question. I feel like I might have gone off the rails there, but let me know.
It's a great answer, and there is something really special in your ability to push forward when it's unknown, when it's hard, when you think you're not gonna make it.
Mhm.
And my question is, where does this belief for yourself come from?
Yeah. I think it's partially out of necessity, partially out of once you push the initial fear, you gotta have a returning proof that like, okay, this worked out last time, it'll probably work out this time. But I mean, initially, I was not a very confident teenager. For a lot of my life, I was not a confident person. I didn't feel like I could do really much of anything for myself in a meaningful way. And that hurt. That made me a very unhappy teenager. And probably even before teenager, I don't know. It all blurs together. 10 to 17, it's the lost years, right? But yeah, I didn't feel like I could do much at all, and that was just not great. That made me very, very sad, kind of depressed, a little bit angry, and I really don't know exactly what it was, but I got to the point where I realized, like, hey, maybe I can change things. Maybe I do have the ability to change. First myself, right? Because I think the first thing you can change is yourself. And in some ways, the only thing you can ever really change is yourself. And if you're lucky, maybe that influences other things around you. So I kind of sat back. I was like, okay, who do I want to be? What do I want to do? How am I going to show up in a way that I am actually happy about and excited for? Even if everything isn't perfect in the moment, how can I put myself in a place to where I said, hey, okay, I did my best. Like, I'm actually happy with what I'm doing. And that, I say that and it sounds like it happened all at once, but it was a very, very slow journey over a number of years. And, I'm still kind of breaking down certain limiting beliefs in my head and saying, oh, wow, okay, well, how could I show up differently? How can I be better? How can I be a person I'm happier with every morning when I wake up? But that trajectory just kind of changed everything. And now, now that I've been doing, on that journey for years and years, it gets a little bit easier. I don't want to say a lot easier, but certain things where it's like, okay, hey, dude, you can probably restart your business here. It's a little bit easier to say, okay, I've done things like this in the past. I have some proof. I'm a little more logically trusting of myself right now, even if I don't necessarily feel it, It's that mind versus emotion kind of thing, kind of pushing yourself past your boundaries a little bit, not in like a dangerous way, but in a way that says, hey, your boundaries aren't working for you. What if you reset them?
That's very interesting because you started to ask yourself very interesting questions very early on, as like, who do I want to become and things like that. But usually it comes from a place where, I'm going to ask you the question in a second, but in a place of something very bad happened in your life, or you're suffering a lot. And my question here is, on a scale to 1 to 10, how much do you think you were suffering at that time, which provoked you to start asking those questions?
Yeah, that's a good question. Scale of 1 to 10, that's really tough. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what a 10 would be, but I mean, I would say I was suffering a lot as far as mental health things go. There's many days I did not want to be alive. There was many times where I was like, everything sucks. I don't like anything. There's nothing good about the world. I want to just, curl up under a tree and never come out. So, I mean, I don't want to put a number on it because that feels kind of weird, but yeah, it was that definitely pushed me, that amount of suffering and dissatisfaction and just like deep, bitter unhappiness with the world and myself. I mean, that pushes you places. I think good things come out of pressure. Not to say that the pressure is always good. That was very bad pressure. But something really came out of that pressure and that stress and that unhappiness. It just forced me into a corner. And fortunately, I ended up in the right corner. I know a lot of people don't end up in the right corner, and that's really sad. But for me, I like, thank God, like, just I ended up in the right corner there. I think so, based on how I'm doing today.
I really love your answer because we can really see your path went from very shy, uncomfortable with yourself, and suffering a lot. You really like explain us how much suffering you experienced in your teenage years. And I think it can happen to everybody at different stage of life. And because you had this, you were able to build now a career that is really fulfilling for you. And we may be gonna talk about more about this in a moment. But I really wanna see and help those people who are now at the place you were in the past and see how we can trying to give them an example and a couple tips on how they can shift their life from inner suffering to building this confidence over time so that they can like try and test and do things that they are really inspiring about.
Yeah. So, I mean, surrounding yourself with good people is humongous. Surround yourself with the people who are doing things or living in a way that you aspire to do or to live in. Because I know, surrounding yourself with people who kind of depress you or like have the same major flaws or problems that you're struggling with, it's going to do one of two things. It's going to either kind of encourage you to stay in that, or it's going to like push you down even more. You're just going to be like sad about all the people around you. You're like, oh man, nobody can get out of this. Like everybody's life kind of sucks in the same way as mine. So why even bother going further? So really find people that you that love you, that you love, that inspire you, that you can be around and actually feel encouraged and motivated in some way. Even nothing's going to be perfect. Nothing's going to just flip the light switch and magically make things up. It's a lot of little things all at once. And I guess that is something else important to remember too. There's no overnight success, so to speak. Nothing just magically happens. There's no like silver bullet that just makes everything like snap into place. So it's finding these little things, like finding those people, finding maybe certain stability in your life that add it all together. And then you're going to slowly see results. Also, I mean, if you really need help, talk to a therapist. I should talk to a therapist or a counselor, way before I was generally better. That would have helped a lot in my journey. I did this a much harder way and in a way that doesn't necessarily succeed for everybody. I would say another important question just to ask in general, I think is, if I were wrong about this, would I want to know? And that can be super powerful in a lot of ways because it's very tempting to show up to things and be like, oh, well, I am this way. Like I am the awkward kid or this thing doesn't work. It's like, okay, well, maybe that's true. But if you were wrong about that, would you really want to know? Like, are you willing to be wrong about that in order to achieve what you want? Like what might that unlock if we allowed ourselves to be wrong more often? And obviously sometimes we're right. Sometimes things just don't work. But I think our default, at least my default, still was and often still is to just say, oh, okay, well, my gut instinct, what I immediately feel, what I believe based off no real experience is absolutely true. And that often shuts things down. It says, oh, Alex, like you can't go to this networking event and meet a bunch of people. Alex, you can't drive across the country. Something's going to go wrong. It's like, well, actually, if I were wrong about these things, what am I missing out on by believing that I'm right and not allowing myself to be wrong? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I love this idea of questioning your own thoughts and on limiting beliefs by trying to see what's possible if I'm wrong. So basically you believe you cannot go to this like networking events, but deep in your mind, you're like, what if I'm wrong? And then it opens the door for possibilities. And I think this is absolutely critical to kind of like challenge your beliefs. And I really love, because I never thought about that question. And that question that you ask yourself is really powerful to change your perspectives. So I really love that. And I want to just ask one more question about this. So you said you build confidence over time. What would you say has been one of the keys to build this confidence over time in yourself? Because you didn't have when you started doing this?
Yeah, messing up a lot and then not messing up after that. I think really just continuously showing up whatever it is that you value that's important. Um, because I mean, initially, right? Initially, I wasn't that great at event photography. I wasn't that great at weddings. A big thing for me in my teenage years was I didn't feel like I felt awkward. I didn't think I could talk to people as well. And so continuously showing up and being like, hey, I'm just gonna pretend like I'm not this. I'm gonna pretend like I'm not the awkward kid. I'm going to do the absolute best I can at photography. And there was a lot of things that hurt in that because you show up, with everything you have, and sometimes it ends up not being enough in that moment, which kind of sucks. That really stings a lot. But I think the trick from that is then to say, okay, what did I gain from this? What am I able to take out of this? What am I able to learn from this? And then go back at it and probably get your butt beat again, probably feel terrible again. But using that willpower to continually show up and just making that incremental progress. So, you get to the point where it's like, okay, wow, like I messed up so many times and now I'm not messing up and I'm still taking notes. And now it's even better. And like, oh my gosh, like, well, what happens if I keep showing up with that spirit of, did you ever watch Magic School Bus?
No, never.
Oh man, I think it might be more of an American thing. But it was a kid's cartoon. There's this teacher, and she's like, take chances, make mistakes, and get messy. And that's kind of her whole philosophy. And like, yeah, do that. And then look for ways you can improve from that. Look for ways you can things you can kind of hold on to from that, and go from there. And I mean, it's been a very long journey, and I think I still have plenty of confidence and things to learn from here. But now I'm excited about it. Now I'm less scared. Now I'm really ready to kind of enter into that and say, hey, how am I wrong? How can I be better? Like, kick me in the face, life, so that I can kind of say, oh, wow, I should have seen that coming. Like, let's be better next time. So that's kind of where I'm at.
And let's talk about where you are at now, because you did something that not a lot of people would have done. And that's something I find quite inspiring in a way. And I want to know from your perspective. So you had your business, your wedding photography business, working well where you were before. And from now, one day you wake up and you decide to move 2,000 kilometers away from your place to start everything from scratch again. Tell me about the journey of taking this decision first, and then why.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to that pressure and dissatisfaction, right? I moved from Pennsylvania to Colorado, which is about, I should really know the exact number, but like roughly 1,800 miles away, something like that. Very long, like 2 long day drive. And so I was very dissatisfied with Pennsylvania for quite a while. I mean, even back to those teenage years, I was like, screw this, I hate Pennsylvania, this is boring. And then I kind of fell into the adult thing where you are moderately successful, and then life gets kind of comfy and you just stay there and you're doing the same thing, and it's fine, but it's not great. It's not, there's better things, but why would you rock the boat, right? Why would you rock the boat? Everything's fine now. But then COVID hit, right? COVID hit. And I was alone in my apartment for 3 months, just doing yoga, watching The Walking Dead, and like lifting weights. So I was like, okay, this sucks. But I'm really grateful for that in a weird way, because it gave me a lot of time to sit down and say, hey, what's wrong? What's going wrong? Because I feel worse than just COVID right now. Like, I feel worse than just the fact that the world's falling apart. Like, I feel like I wasn't quite where I was supposed to be before this. And I finally came to terms with the fact that, hey, like, look, dude, you have to move. Like, you've wanted this for so long and you're just afraid to do it. And if you don't just go for it, you're never gonna do it, and then you're gonna die. That's like the more way of thinking. But like, look, we have a finite amount of time, and if you don't do things, they won't happen. So, that I didn't know exactly where I was gonna move to at that point, but that kind of sparked the fire. I'm like, okay, yeah, this needs to be a very, very real trajectory and goal right now. And I'd always been traveling around the United States. I love road tripping, but I started over that next year, as things started to ease up a little bit, I started to travel more with the perspective of saying, hey, where would I want to stay? Where could I stay? And Colorado really has stuck out to me as the most casually epic place you could live. And I say casually epic in that it's pretty casual, right? There's normal cities, there's normal towns, there's suburbs, there's restaurants and nice people. But then you look, you go a half a mile down the road and there's just ridiculous mountains and like rolling plains. Not rolling, they're actually pretty flat. These flat plains, and just nature everywhere. I mean, you drive an hour and you're just in the most ridiculous places. But at the same time, you can kind of live in a normal area rather than, a lot of other states, it's like either super desolate or a crazy, crazy expensive city. I'm looking at California right now. Y'all are so expensive and also on fire all the time. So it just struck me as the most casually epic place I could live. And I was going to wait a little bit longer to move, but I visited out here for a month last August and or July, I should say. And I kind of said, hey, I need to move as soon as I can. So the first chance I had was January. And so I did it. And now I'm out here. I'm flying back and forth and finishing up my Pennsylvania weddings this year and working on rebuilding my business in Colorado. I went all the way in. I just dove right into this.
And what was the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges to start from scratch? Because I really, I have told you this before before our interview, is this show called Undercover Billionaire. It's like a billionaire who's just moving to a new city who knows nobody, and he starts to build a business in 90 days from scratch. And it makes me feel the same about your story. And I want to know what is, because you're still at the beginning of this. What is one of the most difficult thing trying to start from scratch?
Yeah, so one of the biggest assets I had in Pennsylvania, and the biggest asset I think really anybody in a small business, but especially such a personal business such as wedding photography, are relationships. The network of people you surround yourself with, the other wedding vendors the people in the community And I came out here and I didn't really have a lot of that. Back in Pennsylvania, I could almost not do anything and still have enough of a job. I say not do anything. I could not really market because I knew enough people that things kind of came in enough. And I come out here and I have virtually no connections. So that's been the biggest roadblock, but also honestly the biggest opportunity, because that's been such a blast to like intentionally say, okay, who do I need to know? Who do I want to know? How am I going to find the right people to build these relationships with? And that's been a blast. I've loved getting to know all these new people. I mean, that's what initially was a roadblock has now become really more of an opportunity, and it's been a blast. And I'm really excited to see where these relationships go, what new people I meet. Because at the end of the day, that's kind of what my job was about before. Now I just get to intentionally do that with people who aren't necessarily getting married right now. And I'm loving it.
This is amazing. It made me think about the spirit of adventure that I try to uncover in this podcast. We didn't talk about adventure here, but for me, what you are doing and what you did in the past is exactly the spirit of adventure. It's the spirit of curiosity, trying to embrace the unknown and kind of like challenge yourself like you did. And in that mindset, for me at least, I'm always thinking about death. And I wanted to know, what is your relationship with death?
Yeah, this is a weird thing, right? I don't think anybody has a normal relationship with death. It's kind of odd no matter what. So for me, I kind of some days I ignore it, some days I fear it, some days I'm like, okay, this adds a certain beautiful rhythm to life. So it's a constantly changing and evolving thing. I would say in many ways it drives me to do things. Not that I'm always thinking about death, but it is in a way to say, hey, you only have so much time here, and if you're not going to do this, it's not going to happen, because you don't have forever here to do this thing. And nobody else is probably going to do that for you. It's definitely not going to happen when you're dead. So that it's definitely a consistent driving force not in a terribly morbid way, but it's definitely like a little push. It's like a little push to keep doing things, rather than kind of being too comfortable.
And talking about your wedding photography, what would you say is or are the things that really bring you fulfillment in what you do?
Yeah. I mean, getting to know people right off the bat. I really, really value those relationships just because I'm a people person. I love people, and I really want to know people. Getting to capture those people's stories and be able to hand those back to them and say, hey, this is the story that you valued so much. This is what brought you here. You told me about this. Now I've captured this. You can save this and look back at this. And maybe there's photos of the people you really, really care about in there, because those people aren't going to be around either. And oftentimes they're going to be around for a short amount of time than you are, especially, if you're getting married. And I value that so much. I love being able to memorialize the things that matter to people, rather than just taking beautiful photos. Like, once again, I like taking pretty pictures, but that's like third. That's so secondary to everything. It's like an important part, but probably the least important part. The important part is, who are you? Who do you care about? Like, what brought you here? Because that's not going to last forever. And while it does, I want to capture that and save that in a way that's really honoring to that story for you. So you can kind of hold on to that for as long as you need.
I'm really passionate about what you do, because I see how you bring your love for people and your skills as a photographer together. But like you said, your skills is like almost third. And building a career, what I feel about what you said about your path, is definitely this thing about, okay, I first tried to be a good photographer, but now I want to capture moments. You want to make this thing really beautiful and connect. And it's not more about photography. And my next question is this one. You were a shy kid, and now you say that you're a people person. What do you love about meeting new people, and what does it mean for you to be a people person?
Yeah. I mean, I think the most interesting thing about other people is that they aren't me, right? It's so easy to get bored with myself. Maybe not even bored, but right, there's only so much that I know, so much that I am. And everybody else has something usually very different, but at least marginally different or better or more interesting than me in some way. And I mean, I think that's fascinating to get to know. I'm convinced that most other people probably know a lot of things that I don't. And I'd like to know them, but B, I just find their life experience so fascinating. I mean, at the end of the day, right, there's more other people than there are just me, right? And I really believe that those other people matter more than me, just by the numbers, right? Like, 2 or 3 people, there's more, human value there than there is in just myself. So I'm like, wow, like, well, there's so much more to the world than just me. Like, how cool would it be if I got to experience those people and know them and love them, like really, really show up for them and with them? I mean, how awesome could that be? That's so that's kind of where I'm at with that. I think there was a second question that you asked that I forgot.
Yeah, it was more about, because I really resonate with that, because I used to be quite a shy kid as well, and I'm always asking myself, how did I become a people person? Because when you're a shy person, you just don't want to talk to people.
Yeah. So I mean, that desire was always there, and I think what held me back, what made me quote unquote shy, well, it comes back to that fear of failure. It's like fear of like, oh, well, what if they realize I'm the awkward homeschool kid? What if I say something that tarnishes their view of me in their eyes? And that was just another thing of consistently showing up and being like, wow, I hated that. Like, wow, I really sucked there. And I'm saying like, okay, well, how can I be better? Or how can I approach this differently? Or maybe I just need to say, hey, dude, you're not that bad. Stop worrying about it and just be yourself. It's really a combination of all those things. So it just comes back to that being willing to fail, being willing to ask myself, hey, if I'm wrong about this, am I willing to acknowledge that? And then just, consistently showing up from there. Just having that goal, right? Having something that's worth fighting for, I should say.
And how do you
a future
think,
worth having.
yeah, exactly. And how do you think we can, or how did you detach yourself from what other people think? Because that's basically that thing that stops us from trying to experience new things or doing anything that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean that's really difficult. I still struggle with that. I think most people do to a certain extent, and I'm still in that to a certain extent. And that just goes back to the consistently showing up, saying, "Hey, maybe I do really care what these people think about me, but am I going to let that stop me? Am I going to let that shut me down from doing something that I want to?" So maybe like a lot of the times, it did, and to a certain extent, it still does. It hurts, imagining what other people think about you. I guess that's another thing. Oftentimes, I'm just imagining what other people think about me. It's not actually what they think about me, which is important to note. But even if somebody thinks I'm dumb, or I said something wrong, or I'm not as articulate as I should be, or whatever else it is, am I going to allow that to stop me from continuing to fight for what I want to fight for? Because at the end of the day, I'm going to die. I'm not going to have if I'm not going to do it, nobody else is. So do I care enough about what the other people think, even if it hurts, to stop me from continuing to show up in that way? So that's an important question to ask. Like, what do you value most? You can feel all the things. You can feel hurt by people's perceptions of you, but is that more important to you than what you want?
And where do you see yourself going with maybe your business, your career, or your dreams in 5 to 10 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years. That's tough. I mean, I'm gonna roll it a little bit. We'll see what it comes out. I'd love to be traveling more consistently for work, meeting more people in diverse locations, whether that looks like, I'm shooting more elopements around the country, or maybe something more involved with traveling, or I want to see more things and talk to more people. It's really simple, and I think that can materialize in any number of ways. And right now, I'm sort of building a launch pad for myself in Colorado, so that I can then say, okay, I'm comfortable. Let's get uncomfortable again. Let's push it some more. So it's I really should narrow that down to a very specific, intentional goal, and I'll probably do that after this phone call. But yeah, just more people, more places.
Okay, so I'd love to know that uncomfortable thing or goal that you want to do after, because that's a good way to keep pushing. And yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I want to ask you, why do you want to why are you keep looking for discomfort? Why?
Yeah, I mean, I think discomfort, intentional discomfort, brings about new things. And if you're comfortable forever, things are probably going to stay. That probably means everything's staying the same, and that's fine. Maybe you want to keep things the same, do the exact same thing forever, and kind of stay in autopilot mode. But for me, I'd like to break out of that. I think there is more. There's more to see, more to do, better ways to show up for people, ways to push yourself more. And with the limited amount of time I have, I'd like to see how far I can push that. Like, see how well I can love people, see how well I can show up, see what things I can do that maybe even surprise myself that I haven't thought of yet. Because that's interesting. That seems like it's worth doing. So I mean, discomfort is the way. I think. Oh, I mean, I forget who said it, but it's like an old teacher. It's like the obstacle is the way, right? Like you find the obstacle and get obsessed with the obstacle, and don't try to go around it. Go straight through it, and there you're gonna really find a lot of growth and a lot of beauty throughout that. Despite the suffering, despite the discomfort, despite probably the awkwardness in the middle, the fog of uncertainty, push through that, and I really believe that beauty and growth and meaning comes out of that.
I don't know who said the quote, but I know that Ryan Holiday has written a book that is called "Obstacle is the Way." So that might be it, but I really love that idea of going straight to the discomfort and trying to push through. And talking about discomfort and adventure, what would you say has been one of your most epic adventure to this day?
Yeah, that's tough because I've been on a lot of road trips, but I think the a good one is the one that kind of kicked it off when I was when I was like 18, I took my like beater stick shift Honda Civic around the country for a little over a month, like 5 weeks or so. And probably 9 nights out of 10, I was sleeping in the back of it. I like pushed down the rear seats to the trunk, and I put a board in there so I could put my legs in the trunk, and my head would just kind of be on the board near like the front seats, and I would just sleep in there. So I had my little, like my terrible little RV camper, and I just went around the whole United States, like up north around this, like around the edge, down the West Coast, up around Texas. We basically like kind of going around the whole country. And oh my gosh, dude, as an 18-year-old who had never really gone anywhere without their parents before, or like, not really driven anywhere very far away without their parents before, I should say. Terrifying, but amazing. Saw so many things, so many national parks, but also had a lot of trouble, right? I like slid into a ditch in Oregon. I got super dehydrated in Nevada and just like freaked out a little bit. I got a flat tire in Kansas, which is a terrible place to get a flat tire. Somehow like that happened in the middle of the night, and somehow me being dumb was like, I'm not gonna stop and pull over and rest for a while. I'm going to keep reinflating it and drive through the night. I don't know why. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but I did that. I just pushed myself through that suffering for literally no reason. And got through that. And I mean, that trip was instrumental, right? It showed me a deep love for so many things around the country, for a spirit of adventure. But there was a lot of like white knuckle moments, a lot of moments where I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this. This is so uncomfortable. I kind of hate this. And it really proved to me that, it's like, hey, if I'm not dead, I've survived. Like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Just keep pushing forward, because when you're an 18-year-old kid and you're driving through a ridiculous rainstorm where you can't see 3 feet in front of you, you're in a place thousands of miles away from anything, you don't know where to pull off, and you just have to keep kind of inching forward and keep going and keep going. It's terrible, but it's also like a really big life lesson. It's kind of a great metaphor for life. You don't know necessarily what's coming next, but you kind of keep going. You keep going. You have that direction, and you through grit and willpower and belief, and hopefully a goal and a future that's worth having, which in my case was a dope national park. You keep pushing through that, and so that set me on quite a trajectory from there. That taught me so many great lessons. It gave me a good amount of confidence too. It's like, oh wow, I didn't die. I didn't go broke. I didn't die. I actually made this happen. So that's that was a better confidence builder than college for me. It was just running away for a month on a road trip. So I'd recommend that to anybody who wants to do it. Just disappear for a while and live in a car.
I agree. I mean, adventure for me was a way to build my confidence as well. Give me time to reflect on myself and keep growing, keep pushing, and being uncomfortable pretty much all the time. So I definitely relate with what you're saying. And my next question is, what do you love about adventure?
Yeah, I mean, that venture specifically, I think, was really a coming of age moment. It was me proving to myself that, hey, wow, there's this thing you really wanted for a while. Going around the country, seeing all this stuff. You did it. You fought, or I should say I don't know why I keep saying you, but I fought for that. I continuously showed up and pushed myself through all the things that sucked and hurt and were terrifying and scary. And I got that. And that was priceless. That was absolutely priceless. And I saw things that, ignited love for travel, which was awesome. But ultimately the fact that I accomplished that thing that felt kind of impossible, kind of crazy, kind of ridiculous, there was a humongous confidence builder that was so valuable to myself. And to this day, I look back at that and I'm like, yeah, like, wow, I did that. I don't know how I did that. That's kind of crazy. That's kind of ridiculous for an 18-year-old kid, but I did it, and nobody can take that away.
And if you could talk to your, let's say, I don't know, 12, 13, or even 15 years old Alex, what would you say to him?
Yeah, that your present is not going to be your future. What is right now does not have to be what is in the future. Because it's so easy to get caught up in that, right? Like it's so easy to break out of autopilot and say, whoa, okay, things kind of suck right now. but they don't have to continue to suck in the future, right? Just because it's been like this in the past doesn't mean it's always going to be like this way. And then, say, hey, yo, Alex, how can you change yourself? What are you missing? 'Cause I'm sure there were so many things I was missing, that I just kind of shut myself down on because I wasn't willing to be wrong. I wasn't, old enough and able enough to like look past my own flaws and see what was probably right in front of me. I'm speculating now, but I mean, that happens to me every day now. So I have to imagine that was also the fact when I was, 12, 13, 14. I don't think things have changed that much. I think I was still fooling myself that. So yeah, that's what I would say.
And I have the opposite question is, let's imagine now you talk to Alex, 10 years older than now. What would you say he would say to you now?
So the future Alex would say to me,
Yeah.
oh man, I don't know. Like, hey dude, you should have pushed more. Or hey dude, like you pushed a lot. Like, good job. I hope so. I hope he'd be like, yeah, you pushed. And you're still pushing. That'd be great. But realistically, he'll probably be like, hey dude, you pushed a lot, but oh my God, like there are other ways you should have pushed. Like, just because that's what happens. I'm not perfect. There's things I'm gonna miss. And I'm excited to see what those are. I'm really excited to see what those are. So I can, hopefully not miss them again in the future.
Yes. Awesome. I have 3 more questions to ask you before to end this episode. That was a fantastic conversation, but I really want to know this one. Let's imagine you are at the bottom of the Magic Mountain. It's a mountain way higher than Mount Everest. And once you reach the top, you have the power to talk to one person, dead or alive. Who would it be and why?
That's really, really tough. That's really tough. I don't know that. Can I have a second to think about that? Oh man. I mean, I think it would be very interesting. And this isn't like a great answer, but I think it'd be interesting to talk to Steve Jobs. I used to idolize him as a kid. Now I realize that his leadership techniques probably weren't the best. I was kind of a jerk to people. But he's sort of such a modern mythical character in business and technology that I think it would be so fascinating to like get to know him as an actual person, on a personal level. Because, I'm sure he was kind of a jerk. I'm sure he was also kind of a genius. But so much of that is mythologized, right? So I think it'd be so interesting to kind of see that person in just like a normal human aspect. I'm sure I'll come up with a better answer in like 10 minutes after the call is done. But that just kind of sprung into mind.
Awesome. That's a great answer. I mean, the goal of this question is absolutely to see what comes out of your mind straight away without thinking. So really, really appreciate your answer and being honest and just true. 2 more questions here. What would you say has been your 3 life's adventure lessons?
3 lessons from adventures in life. One would be to keep pushing, right? If you're not dead, you still have a shot. 2 would be, love other people. They matter more than you, and they can also help you more than you could ever know. To just really show up and like love and give to people that'll return just so much more than anything. And 3, I'm always bad with on the spot numbers. Let's see, third lesson. I mean, I want to kind of reiterate, like, to constantly ask yourself, if I were wrong, like be willing to be wrong, I guess is what I should say. Be willing to be wrong, because that'll open up so much for you. It's better than pretending like you're right all the time, because I'm not right all the time. I don't think any of us are gonna be right all the time. And if we think that, we're lying to ourselves and everybody else, and other people probably know it.
Be willing to be wrong. Really love that one. So it's a great one that I'm definitely gonna keep. Before I ask you the last question, I just want to take a quick moment, Alex, to thank you for being such a beautiful photographer and trying to capture those moments that really means a lot to you. And to be that guy who just is willing to be wrong all the time, to keep pushing, keep growing, and be an example of the people, I'm sure, that can witness your path, to be an example, to keep pushing despite discomfort, despite adversity. And I just want to thank you for that for a moment. And where can we follow more about what you do online?
Yeah, man. Thank you for that. So if you want to go to my website, that's awesome. It's just alexmedvick.com. My last name is Medvick. And I'm also on Instagram. It's Alex Medvick Photo, AlexMedvickPhoto. I always have to spell that out just to be obnoxious. You can kind of find me everywhere else too, but I don't really do anything. So if you find me on Twitter, on Facebook, you're just gonna be disappointed. So unless you're bored, I would say just go to Instagram or my website. That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'd love to. Hit me up, shoot me a message. I'd love to have conversations with anybody who's interested.
Awesome. I'm gonna put in the show notes the link of your website and the link of your Instagram so that people can go check you out. And last question, adventure. What does it mean to you?
Ooh, I like that. I think it's an intentional discomfort in search of a goal. Yeah, I like that. Intentional discomfort in search of a specific goal. So that could be road trips. That could be a relationship, right? I think a relationship can be an adventure in a way. It could be a new business. It could be moving. I think it could be anything, but I think it's intentionally pushing yourself in a way that's kind of scary, kind of uncomfortable, but in a direction that feels worthwhile. So you get to the end, you say, "Oh my gosh, that was scary, that was terrifying, that was dangerous, but this has been worth it." So yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Beautiful way to end this podcast. Alex, thank you so much for your wisdom and for who you are, and thank you for this beautiful interview.
Thank you for having me, man. This has been a blast. Definitely stay in touch. I've loved this.
All right. Bye, guys. See you soon.